Hey, it's Brock here from Rock Hill Farms, and this is going to be a little bit different video than what I normally make because we're not going to show any tractors. But if you didn't know, I've got a couple of rental properties, and this is one of them. I actually started this YouTube channel with the purpose being to show me working on my rental properties, and just had a change of direction because I'm not spending most of my time doing that. But from time to time, you have to go and get some work done on these and make some improvements or fix things that get broken. So that's what we're here for. So in the case of this house, the first few videos on this channel are me completely gutting and renovating this house. It's got all new electric, it's got all new plumbing. On the exterior of the house, we had to replace some siding, we replaced all the windows, we replaced all the trim, we repainted the house, repainted the trim, and I think all that came out really well. About the only thing that we didn't replace was the front and back doors, because they were structurally sound. They didn't open and close very well, and after doing some leveling, I had to make some adjustments to those doors, but they didn't need to be replaced, so we didn't. Fast forward, it's been almost 2 years later. The back door had a big glass panel in it. That glass panel got broken out. And I decided, instead of replacing that glass panel, it's just an old door, let's just replace the door. So, I just went to the lumber yard, gonna grab a door. Guess what? These are not standard size doors. The front and the rear don't match anything they had for sale at Lowe's. The front and the rear don't match each other. So that left us with a little bit of a problem. You might be thinking, why not just cut the frame out to a standard size door and buy a modern steel door? Well, a couple things. Number one, that would be a lot more expensive. Number two, a lot more time consuming. And number three, the back door, which is shorter than a standard door by about 2.5 inches, there's not much room above it. So if I cut that doorway out, I wouldn't have any room for trim above it. It's just more expensive, more time consuming, more problematic to put all new framing in, replace all the trim, get it all repainted to look nice. So we're just gonna replace the doors. And I looked all over till I found a solid wooden door that was slightly bigger than the back door. I brought that over, and I rent this house to my daughter, and she likes the door. She likes it enough that she wanted it to be the front door, and she wanted the front door to be the back door. That requires me to cut both doors to fit. I got the old front door out. It's leaned over here. That's going to be our new back door, and the new front door is in place, but it doesn't really fit. I grabbed this door because it has unusual hinges. Instead of the other side of your hinge being in between the door and the frame, it was on the face of the door, and I'd never seen that before. The house was built in 1914 and then moved here in, like, what was it, 1940s or something? So it'd been through a lot, and you could see it whenever I started tearing into it. But it's got like original door hardware, and around the door handles and all that was original, and it was like ornate, but not all that functional. So I need to replace all the door handles too. So where we're at right now is I've got the old door off, I've got the new door hung just by a couple of screws, and it doesn't fit. So we're gonna see if we can trim some wood off the top, and I've got a new tool here that I think is gonna make that easier. Generally, for something like this, I would either take the door off and cut it with a table saw or a circular saw, or I would try to sand the top of it with a belt sander like this, and just sand a little and try to close it, and sand it and try to close it. Kind of a slower, frustrating way to do it. Today I'm going to try trimming the top of that door with this handheld electric planer. I've never used anything like this. I actually got this because I wanted to do some planing on some of the wood that we milled off of the property. But as I was having this problem with the door, I thought that is the perfect solution for that handheld planer. So let's get up there and see how far off we are and see how good of a job this planer does at getting this door to close. All right. Alright, so this is the type of problem you run into with these older houses. That's just part of working on an older house, is nothing's ever square. I mean, none of the floors were level in here. None of the doorways were square. Everything had sagged. And I had to cut a lot of these doors just to get them square enough to open and close them. But where we're at right now is we have a little bit too much gap on one side and not enough on the other. I think we can use a little bit of weather stripping on the top if we cut the side right here down enough to get it to close. All right, so as I work on this, I would say feel free to tell me anything that I do wrong, or if you know a better way to do something. But just so we're clear, I'm no, handyman. I'm no tractor expert or any of the other things I do. I just try to know enough to get things done. And in this case, this house isn't perfect, but everything I've done has been good enough that it's provided a little bit of side income for me and an affordable living situation for my daughter. So it's been a good deal. This door was all kinds of messed up when I started. I got it functional, and I'm gonna have to do the same process again. This is gonna be my first time using this planer. It's got like a bigger fence you can put on it for keeping it straight as you go down a project, but depending on what you're doing, that may or may not be necessary. For this, I don't think it will be. So all I'm gonna do, I just pulled this out of the box and turned it on, but it looks like you've got a dial here on the top. As you turn that dial, it changes your thickness. So I'm gonna set this on a fairly low setting to just remove a little bit of material at once, at a time. So my goal in life is to earn a living without a job. I did almost 20 years of manufacturing, and it just sucks the life out of you, when you don't have any personal motivation towards that job other than just the satisfaction of a good job. But being your own boss, while it can be stressful, has its own set of rewards too. So that's how I get by as a jack of all trades but a master of none. I could make this a little easier by pulling the pins off the hinges and setting the door down, but I think this is going to hold it still as well as anything else I could do, and I need to get on the top, and I want it to be horizontal, so we're just going to give it a try.
What are you going to do with that?
Just going to cut a little off the door.
And then you're going to...
Well, that went pretty smooth. It removed just a little bit more than the paint, which I've got it set on a low setting. I don't want to be too aggressive with this because I don't want any more gap than we have to. Two passes and you can kind of force it closed. Obviously we don't want it that tight though. Three passes, it just barely skims it. I'd say that's probably good enough, but when you factor in that temperature changes are going to make the wood swell or retract, I think I'll do maybe 2 more passes just like I did. It's not rubbing anywhere, but if we look at this door, the clearance on it. See, there's a lot more clearance on this side. And if I'm gonna put some kind of a weather seal in there, I guess it needs to be closer to the same amount of clearance on each side. Otherwise, I'd just be putting weather seal on one side. Let's try taking a little more off per pass, and we'll go from setting 1 to setting 2. Alright, that seems to be a little bit better. I think we'll put some weather sealing in that and we'll call the top good. Alright, now that we got the top to close, looks like I got fairly lucky that my gap on the side is about the same all the way down. Not too bad. I cut this door widthways at home on the table saw and was worried it wasn't going to fit, but not too bad. So, the previous door had a doorknob here. Now we have a doorknob up here. Previously, the deadbolt was here. Now it's going to be up here. What that results in is that the inside of your door frame has a bunch of holes in it and it's now weak. So, the best option would be to take this trim off, probably cut the sheetrock back a little bit, and replace that whole board. But that's not what I'm going to do today. And in the future, I may replace this entire setup with a modern steel door. But for now, this is going to work. So I'm going to take, this is the striker plate that comes with the doorknob. This is the one that comes with the deadbolt. I'm going to replace this with this. It's got 6 screws instead of 2 screws. And instead of the little short screws, it uses these long screws. So even though our inside door frame looks like Swiss cheese, this is going to give it the strength it needs to actually do the job. I'll show you up close what that looks like before and after. So there's our old hole. There's the old deadbolt. Here's the new one. This, that's going to mount right there, cover all those other holes, and still be strong. Alright, so there's the new striker. Some of those screws are really anchored in pretty well. The previous door had these unusual hinges, and I had to notch the door trim for those hinges. Now I have a big gap right there. So I'm going to have to replace this trim piece right here, and that will help with those gaps. So I pulled that piece of trim off, and it pulled a bunch of tape off, or paint off with it, because I had caulking down the seam. So had to run to the hardware store, get another piece of trim board, get that painted up, and I'm going to have to notch it for around the hinges. I've never notched a trim board around hinges before, but that's just the way this one fits. If you don't notch it a little bit for those hinges, it's not going to pull up flush where it needs to be around the door.
What are you doing, Papa? What are you doing, Papa?
There's where I had to notch around the hinge. Alright, so right here, this door was hitting at the top and it wouldn't close. I'm really impressed with this planer as a tool to clean up a door face. Few passes from the top, I'm just working down. Down here, I started lifting it off, it just barely took the paint. So these are the doorknobs that were on the house, on all the doors. I left as many of them as I could because I felt like it added character. But as the doorknobs break, it's not worth it. So I'm replacing all of these with a standard doorknob. And I'm hoping that there aren't multiple holes in this door that I have to fill. We got a pretty good backpack up here. So I wanted to show a completed project on the front door, but that wall had to be repainted where it was damaged from pulling the trim out, and the door trim had to be repainted, and they both needed time to dry, and it's later in the evening, and there was just no way to get that done today, and tomorrow I'll be on to other things. But I'll have to come back over and do some finish work, but probably won't bring the camera along for that. The most impressive thing today was that electric planer. So I'll put a link in the description to that planer in case anyone else is interested. I had never used one of those before, but now that I used it today, I see a lot of potential uses for that tool. That's what I was afraid of. It's not a huge deal, but there's not a standard hole for a regular doorknob here. So I did not bring a hole saw. I'm gonna have to go get that. Then you don't have a standard port right here to accept it either. It's all gonna have to be at least modified a little bit. These had funky doors on them. Like a skeleton key would have fit this at one time. This is a little bit problematic. I pulled this huge mechanism out of here for the lock. Which doesn't leave a lot of wood here in the door. So that's going to take a more extensive patch. I could always replace this door, but I felt like these had a lot of character. These are all raised panels and just had a unique look to them, so I wanted to leave them, but I may be able to fill that in with wood in there. I'll just have to look at it tomorrow. I may glue something up. But it's getting kind of late in the day, and I'm going to call this one at the end of the video. I just kind of wanted to show you what goes along with owning a property. Is you got to be a little bit of a handyman, or you're going to spend all your rent that you collect on little repairs. But I appreciate you taking time to watch. You should see links to more of our videos on the screen, and I'll see you next time.